a fresh nightmare for Prince Harry as he is sued by the charity that he co-founded in the memory of his mother, Diana.
Because it does seem like she's holding off on some things. She hasn't fully revealed everything, but she is bringing a lawsuit. This must make Harry furious. This must make him beyond furious. So look, this is bad news. Bad news bears, I would say, for Prince Harry, the fact that now he's going to have to go do a whole case to fight this thing.
And what happens, so if he does lose, and you say he's on the hook for, potentially millions of dollars, etc., if he loses both those cases, where's he going to get the money from? Because the income streams are pretty much exhausted now, aren't they? Because, the TV programs haven't really worked. He's knocked out the book. Well, that's the book. The book's done. What is left in order to get some cash in?
Let's talk about something that has never happened before in the history of the British royal family. A charity, one built from the ground up by a senior royal in memory of his own mother, has now taken that same royal to London's High Court, accusing him of being behind a coordinated smear campaign. That royal is Prince Harry. That charity is Sentebale. And if it sounds shocking already, the situation goes much deeper than just a lawsuit. What's unfolding right now is layered, and by the end of it, you'll understand why many see this as a turning point that could shift everything. To really understand why this case feels different from anything we've seen before, you need to look at what Sentebale actually represents and why it meant so much to Harry personally. Back in 2006, a 21-year-old Prince Harry traveled to Lesotho, a small and economically challenged country completely surrounded by South Africa, and what he encountered there was serious. At the time, the country was facing one of the highest HIV and AIDS infection rates in the world, and that reality made a lasting impact on him. Orphaned children, broken communities, and an entire generation fading away quietly with barely any global attention. That was the reality on the ground. During his gap year, Harry spent time working at an orphanage there, and it clearly left a mark on him. He didn't come back the same.
Look, I'll give you some free advice. Just stop talking. Just stop talking, Harry. Stop. Just stop it. You're taking people to court in this country. There's a good chance you're going to lose both those cases, right? And it's just like, have you got any idea what that makes you look like? Then the impact it still has on our royal family, which has already had its troubles with Andrew, the black sheep. Just stop it.
He later co-founded Sentebale alongside Prince Siso of Lesotho, both of them driven by the memory of their mothers. Princess Diana had spent her final years challenging the stigma around AIDS in a very public and hands-on way, while Siso's mother, Queen Mamo Mahato, was also deeply connected to the cause. The name Sentebale translates to forget-me-not in Sesotho, a direct and personal tribute to Diana's legacy. This was never just for show. It wasn't about appearances or attaching a name to a project. Since 2010, the charity's annual Polo Cup alone has raised over £11 million. And when Harry stepped away from royal life in 2020, leaving behind the palace, his family, and official duties, this was one of the few commitments he chose to keep. He made it clear that it still mattered to him, that it was personal. Now, that same charity has filed defamation proceedings against him in the High Court. The organization tied so closely to his mother's legacy is now at the center of a legal fight involving him. This is where things start to get more complex. Dr. Sophie Chandauka stepped in as chair of the board. She is a Zimbabwean-born lawyer, a former Meta executive, and someone with a strong professional background.
The reason I'm here, Trevor, is because at some point on Tuesday, Prince Harry authorized the release of a damaging piece of news to the outside world without informing me, or my country directors, or my executive director. And can you imagine what that attack has done for me, on me, and the 540 individuals in the Sentebale organizations and their family? That is an example of harassment.
Making her one of the most high-profile leaders the organization has had. She stepped into the role with a clear vision and the credentials to support it. Her stance was direct. The charity, as it was being run out of London, was losing money, while the children in Lesotho and Botswana were only receiving a small portion of what was actually being raised. The fundraising style, with luxury polo matches in Florida and high-profile galas filled with celebrities and billionaires, looked impressive online, but didn't translate to enough impact where it mattered most. Her plan was to shift the focus back to Africa, strengthen local fundraising systems, and reduce what she saw as excessive overhead. On paper, it sounded practical and long overdue, but that's when everything started to unravel in public. Chandauka went on television and made serious claims. She accused Harry of being behind a pattern of bullying and pressure aimed at pushing her out of her position. She didn't speak in vague terms, she pointed to specific moments. One involved the Netflix camera crew that Harry had brought to a Sentebale fundraiser, which she said disrupted the event. Another situation centered around Meghan at a polo fundraiser, where Meghan reportedly walked past Dr. Sophie without acknowledgement and reached for the charity trophy for a photo moment, leaving Dr. Sophie standing there in front of donors and cameras. Then came the statement that drew the most attention. Dr. Sophie said publicly that she only chose to speak out because Harry had approved the release of damaging information to the media without informing her first. As she described it, there was no call, no warning to her, no heads up to the country directors or even the executive director. According to her account, he spoke to media contacts before addressing the leadership of his own charity. That goes beyond a simple disagreement over management. The way it's being framed, this looks like a calculated move. The Charity Commission stepped in to investigate the situation.
Been used to fund this campaign. But what Dr. Sophie Chandauka believes is that the charity will never be able to do all of its good work until, once and for all, the claims that Harry made about her, and Meghan too, by the way, are sorted out, hopefully in a court of law.
In the end, they said there was no clear evidence of widespread bullying, but they did call out everyone involved for allowing a private dispute to spill into the public and damage a charity that was supposed to support children living with HIV. Harry's team pushed back against the findings, while Dr. Sophie welcomed the report. Not long after, Harry and co-founder Prince Seeiso resigned, along with the entire board of trustees. Dr. Sophie, however, stayed in position, continuing to lead the organization.
Lawyers, this is in relation to Sentebale suing Harry, lawyers generally try to dissuade and discourage clients from filing lawsuits due to the eye-watering costs, the high stakes, and the risks involved. A decision to move ahead suggests there is financial support and, wait for it, significant evidence.
She didn't step away quietly. Instead, she escalated things to the High Court. The case, formally titled Sentebale versus the Duke of Sussex and Another, was filed on March 24, 2026, with court records becoming public on April 10th. In its official statement, the charity named Harry and his longtime associate Mark Dyer, who had also served as a trustee, as central figures behind what it described as a coordinated negative media campaign. According to the filing, this campaign led to a wave of online harassment directed at the charity and its leadership. The wording is direct and serious. Phrases like architects and coordinated cyberbullying carry weight. This is not being presented as a misunderstanding or a falling out between colleagues.
Harry, to face reality, that's what's troubling to him. So when Dr. Sophie comes and goes, hey, you know what, Spare and Netflix, that kind of damaged your reputation and by extension has damaged us. That's hard for him, not just because of Meghan in particular, but because then Harry would have to realize that Harry's problems are the result of Harry's own actions. Because what I think drives so much of Harry is believing everything that's happened to him that's negative is external. It has nothing to do with him.
It is a formal legal claim that Harry played a role in damaging the reputation of the very organization he helped build, and that the backlash faced by Dr. Sophie and her team came as a result of that effort. Harry's spokesperson responded quickly, calling the allegations offensive and damaging, and stating that he completely rejects them. The statement then shifted focus, describing it as extraordinary that charitable funds were being used to take legal action against the very people who had built and supported the organization for nearly 20 years. Now look closely at that response, because what it leaves out is just as important. It doesn't directly say that no media campaign ever happened. Instead, it challenges the decision to use charity money for the lawsuit. That's a very precise and carefully worded denial, the kind often seen in legal disputes where every word is chosen for a reason. And that's where the situation takes on a different layer. For the past few years, Harry has been one of the most visible figures in British courtrooms, usually as the one bringing claims forward.
Essentially, the flavour of what she said is that actually this appears to have legs as a case because Sentebale have independent funding. So this court case, this libel action against Harry is not being funded through charitable donations. There is a benefactor that is paying for this. Also, the board of United is not just Dr. Sophie Chandauka, who had that public row with Harry. The board are on board with this one, no pun intended. And they have a case because they wouldn't want to go into this risking losing.
Exactly.
He's taken legal action against newspapers and publishers. He stood outside courtrooms and made it clear that accountability matters, that the truth matters, and that no one should be above the law. Each case has been presented as part of a broader fight for fairness and responsibility. Now the roles are reversed. The High Court is handling a case where Harry is no longer the one making the claims, but the one responding to them. The plaintiff is the charity he helped create to honor his mother's legacy. The allegation is defamation, and the position he finds himself in now mirrors the very arguments he has been making for years, only from the other side of the courtroom. And this is where the situation becomes even more intense, because at the exact moment this lawsuit became public, Harry was boarding a plane to Australia. This isn't an official royal tour. He's scheduled as the keynote speaker at a workplace mental health conference in Melbourne, with reports placing his speaking fee at around $50,000. At the same time, Meghan is hosting a 3-day women's wellness retreat at a luxury beach hotel in Sydney, with ticket prices ranging between $2,700 and $3,200 per person for roughly 300 attendees. Now focus on what Harry is being paid to speak about. He's delivering a talk on psychosocial safety at work, how leaders should treat the people under their responsibility, and the importance of workplace well-being. All of that is happening in the same week that a charity is formally accusing him in the High Court of being involved in a coordinated harassment campaign against its own leadership. The timing raises serious questions on its own, but there's another layer that adds more tension to the situation. A spokesperson for Harry and Meghan stated publicly that the trip was entirely privately funded. However, a petition with over 45,000 signatures in Australia called for no public money to be used in connection with the visit.
Meghan does not care about Sentebale, never cared about Sophie Chandauka. She had no care at all for this organization because this was all about Netflix too. They were filming this for Netflix. So Meghan wanted her Netflix moment, and that's all that was in Meghan's head. I think that was what was driving everything is Netflix, wanting to look perfect, wanting to be the center. That is Meghan.
Harry's response to that concern was widely seen as dismissive. He referred to the issue as a moot point and questioned what the petition was trying to achieve, which many interpreted as brushing off the concerns entirely. Despite those statements, both New South Wales Police and Victoria Police later confirmed that they would be carrying out public safety operations during the visit, adding another dimension to an already complicated situation. Taxpayer-funded and publicly confirmed, the exact concern raised by those 45,000 people ended up being valid. The spokesperson had dismissed the petition as ridiculous, but within the same week, police confirmations told a different story. That contrast didn't go unnoticed. Then there's the situation surrounding Meghan's wellness retreat. The event was promoted as a space focused on women supporting and empowering each other. However, one journalist who purchased a ticket at full price was initially accepted and even received a personal email confirming her spot. She made arrangements to attend, only to later be contacted and told she could no longer come. The reason given was her profession. She worked in the media. According to her account, there had been no mention of that kind of restriction during the booking process. No stated terms or conditions flagged it in advance. When she later requested a tax invoice to claim the expense, she reportedly received a phone call instead, followed by a rejection. So an event centered on connection, community, and women supporting one another ended up excluding a paying guest based on her job title. That detail has added another layer of scrutiny.
All of Harry's latest escapades, so we're talking about Spare, we're talking about Netflix documentary, we're talking about the Oprah interview, had actually harmed Sentebale. Harry's response was so fascinating, Brittany. He said, well, it hasn't harmed Johnny Depp. And I think that just shows such a fundamental misunderstanding about where Meghan had taught him he stood.
If you step back and look at everything happening within a tight 72-hour window, the situation becomes harder to ignore. A charity filed defamation proceedings against Harry in the High Court. At the same time, he traveled to Australia to deliver a paid speech focused on workplace mental health. Meanwhile, Australian authorities confirmed that public resources would be used for safety operations, despite earlier statements suggesting otherwise. A paying guest was turned away from a high-profile event after being accepted, and tens of thousands of Australians had already made it clear they did not want public funds connected to the visit. Taken together, these events have created a week that stands out for both its timing and the number of overlapping controversies. This doesn't come across as random bad timing. It starts to look more like a pattern. And the pattern people are pointing to is this. Harry and Meghan often present themselves as being up against forces outside their control, whether that's the press, the royal institution, or public perception. But in many of the major conflicts tied to them, the opposition hasn't been anonymous or unclear. Instead, it has involved identifiable and established individuals and groups, a charity chair, a full board of trustees, a regulatory body like the Charity Commission, even tens of thousands of taxpayers. And across these situations, a similar narrative keeps surfacing about how decisions are handled, how information is shared, and how disagreements are managed. Dr. Sophie Chandauka is not part of the media. She's not connected to palace dynamics or internal rivalries. She's a Zimbabwean-born lawyer who led a charity focused on supporting children living with HIV. And by multiple accounts, she was deeply invested in its mission. Her position, as described, is that she was caught off guard when information was taken to the press without any prior discussion.
I am not surprised by this in the slightest. Prince Harry is now being sued for libel by his former charity, Sentebale, court records show.
From her perspective, when she resisted, the narrative shifted in a way that placed the blame on her. And instead of responding through media appearances or public platforms, she chose a different route. She didn't release a memoir. She didn't give a high-profile interview. She didn't start a media campaign. She filed a case in the high courts and is relying on the legal process to address the claims. That kind of move suggests a high level of certainty in the evidence being presented. If the case moves forward into the discovery phase, it could require the release of private communications, including emails and text messages, which would bring a new level of detail into public view. What comes next could go even deeper. If this case moves forward, it could bring out documented exchanges between Harry's representatives and media outlets, showing exactly how that alleged campaign was structured and carried out. And that's why many experienced observers believe this may never make it all the way to a full trial.
He's a very angry young man for all kinds of reasons. You know, he lost his mum at a very early age, which you never recover from, despite what people say. So that's permanently there. That's not changing. But I also think he's got this influence of Meghan. You can almost, it seems to me that it's almost like, Harry, you got to show them who's boss. Harry, you got to show them who the top man is, right? All of that going on. And I think that she is driving this. And ultimately, I think some people in this country kind of still have a soft spot for Harry, but increasingly their patience is wafer, paper thin.
The discovery phase alone has the potential to expose private communications, emails, and internal decisions that both sides may not want fully aired in public. That kind of pressure often leads to fast and quiet settlements. But regardless of what happens next, the filing itself has already made an impact. It has done something no interview, documentary, or public statement could achieve. It has placed Prince Harry on official record in the High Court of England as a defendant in a defamation case brought by the very charity he helped create in honor of his mother. Dr. Sophie Chandauka has taken this out of the public narrative into a legal arena where evidence matters more than perception. Now the case is open, the claims are formal, and the next steps could reveal far more than anyone expected. If you want to stay updated as this develops, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments.